Hey, everybody. My name is Ben Grace, and I am here to read a bedtime story for you because my friend Eric Jackson suggested it, and I thought it would be kind of fun because I really like to read aloud, and my parents don't really like it when I just start to read to them in the middle of the day. So, I'm going to be reading from Grimm's Fairy Tales, illustrated by Fritz Kirtle. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm not German, so I'm not sure. Just so you know, back over there. That is an amazing drawing by my friend Andrew Gerton. I just thought I would have a little bit of ADHD. I'm going to be reading the story, Briar Rose. Let's just get that up in the camera there. You can see that fancy lettering. Briar Rose, otherwise known as Sleeping Beauty. I love this story because it's not really like the other princess stories. It's kind of an adventure one. You know, like it's actually exciting. Now this may be the really old version, so at the end it gets a little weird. But I don't know actually what version this is. I've never read it in this book before, so I'm going to be reading that for you guys today. A long time ago, there lived a king and a queen who said every day, "If we only had a child," but for a long time they had none. It happened once, as the queen was bathing, that a frog crept out of the water onto the land and said to her, "Your wish shall be fulfilled. Before a year has passed, you shall bring a daughter into this world." The frog's words came true. The queen had a little girl who was so beautiful that the king could not contain himself for joy. It's kind of creepy. And he prepared a great feast. He invited his relatives, friends, and acquaintances, and also the fairies, in order they might be favorably and kindly disposed towards the child. There were 13 of them in the kingdom, but as the king had only 12 golden plates for them to eat from, one of the fairies had to stay at home, because they have to eat from gold plates, or they just can't come. The feast was held with all splendor, and when it came to an end, the fairies all presented the child with a magic gift. One gave her virtue, another beauty, a third riches, and so on, with everything in the world that she could wish for. When 11 of the fairies had said their say, the 13th suddenly appeared. She wanted to revenge herself for not having been invited because there weren't enough plates. That's like the, you can't come. Why not? Oh, because we don't have enough plates for you. There's not a plate. It's like when you ask a girl out and she says, "I have to wash my hair. I can't. I'm so busy with my hair." It's horrible and mean. But anyway, I digress. Without greeting anyone or even glancing at the company, she called out in a loud voice, "The princess shall prick herself with a distaff in her 15th year and shall fall down dead." And without another word, she turned and left the hall. Everyone was terror-stricken, but the 12th fairy, whose wish was still unspoken, stepped forward. She could not cancel the curse, but could only soften it, so she said, It shall not be death, but a deep sleep, lasting 100 years, into which your daughter shall fall." The king was so anxious to guard his dear child from the misfortune that he sent out a command that all the distaffs in the whole kingdom should be burned. As time went on, all the promises of the fairies came true. The princess grew up beautiful, modest, kind, and clever, that everyone saw her and could not help but love her. I'm kind of in love with her. She seems like the perfect woman. Now it happened that on the very day when she was 15 years old, the king and queen were away from home, and the princess was left quite alone in the castle. She wandered all about the whole palace, looking at rooms and halls as she pleased, and at last she came to an old tower. She ascended a narrow, winding staircase, and reached a little door. A rusty key was sticking in the lock, and when she turned it, the door flew open. In a little room sat an old woman with a spindle, spinning her flax busily. "Good day, Granny," said the princess. "What are you doing?" "I am spinning," said the old woman, and nodded her head. "I am spinning." "What is that thing that whirls around so merrily?" asked the princess, and as she took the spindle and tried to spin too. But she had scarcely touched it before the curse was fulfilled. She pricked her finger with the spindle. The instant she felt the prick, she fell upon the bed, which was standing near. That's awesome, I guess. She didn't fall on the floor. And lay still in a deep sleep, which spread over the whole castle. And there's this really terrifying picture of the princess and that old lady who has the biggest eyes of all time. Thanks, Fritz, for that nightmarish image. Anyway, the king and the queen, who had just come home and had stepped into the hall, went to sleep. They just don't care, and all their courtiers with them. The horses went to sleep in the stable, the dogs in the yard, the doves on the roof, and the flies on the wall. Yet even the fire flickering on the hearth grew still and went to sleep, and the roast meat stopped crackling. The cook, who was pulling the scullion's hair because he had made some mistake, let him go and went to sleep. The wind dropped, and the trees in front of the castle did not stir. But round the castle a hedge of briar roses began to grow up. Every year it grew higher, till at least it surrounded the whole castle, so that nothing could be seen of it, not even the flags on the roof. But there was a legend in the land about the lovely sleeping Briar Rose, as the king's daughter was called, and from time to time princes came and tried to force a way through the hedges into the castle. They found it impossible, for the thorns, as though they had hands, held them fast, and the princes remained caught in them without being able to free themselves, and so they died a miserable death. After many, many years, a prince came again to the country and heard an old man tell of the castle which stood behind the briar hedge, in which a most beautiful maiden called Briar Rose had been asleep for the last 100 years, and with her the king and the queen and all their courtiers. He knew also from his grandfather that many princes had already come and sought to pierce the briar hedge, and had remained caught in it, and died horribly. Like, very, very badly. Like, one of the worst. Okay. Then the young prince said, "I am not afraid. I am determined to go and look upon this lovely Briar Rose." The good old man did all in his power to dissuade him. "You're going to die." But the prince would not listen to his words. Now, however, the 100 years were just ended, and the day had come when Briar Rose was to wake up again. When the prince approached the briar hedge, it was in blossom. And was covered with beautiful, large flowers, which had made way for him of their own accord, and let him pass unharmed, and then closed up again into a hedge behind. He can't leave. In the courtyard he saw the horses, and brundled horses laying asleep. But brundled hounds, not brundled horses. There's horses, then there's brundled horses. The brundled hounds, laying asleep. On the roof sat the doves with their heads under their wings. I feel like if this happened in modern day, people would like be crashing cars and airplanes and stuff. But back then, no one had anything important or dangerous to do. And when he went into the house, the flies were asleep on the walls, and near the throne lay the king and queen. In the kitchen was the cook, with his hand raised as though he was about to strike the scullion, and the maid sat with the black fowl in her lap, which she had just been about to pluck. He went on farther, and all was so still that he could hear his own breathing, and he was royally freaked out. At last he reached the tower, and opened the door into the little room where Briar Rose was asleep. There she lay, looking so beautiful that he could not take his eyes off her. He bent down and gave her a kiss. As he touched her, Briar Rose opened her eyes and looked lovingly at him. And that is the prince going through the hedges, because he's all BA and stuff. He's just the coolest. And then they went down together, and the king woke up, and the queen, and all the courtiers, and looked at each other with astonished eyes. The horses in the stable stood up and shook themselves. Everyone woke up. Then the wedding of the prince and Briar Rose was celebrated with all splendor, and they lived happily until they died. It really says that. They did not live happily ever after. They lived happily until they died. That was Briar Rose, from Grimm's Fairy Tales. That illustration or two was by Fritz Kirtle, I believe his name is. I don't know what edition of that book that is, for anyone interested in this really pretty red book. I found it at a used bookstore, and they're like, "It's really old." I was like, "How old?" And they're like, "I don't know." I think it's from the 70s. It actually has this really great, I'm getting so off topic, it has this really great front piece. It's in the back too, just of like some fairy tale scene. That was my bedtime story for Eric Jackson, which sounds weird, but hey, he wanted me to read him a story. I got very distracted a lot, and I apologize. But I haven't made a video in forever, so I thought I would. And I wish you all a good night and some good sleepy times. That's it. That was my story. This is like the longest video I've ever made, which is incredibly sad. What's your longest video? Oh, when I read this story. It's a really great cartoon. I loved it a lot. It was really cool, and that didn't have the weird ending, because in the weird ending, the prince sleeps with the princess before she wakes up, and she wakes up and has children. And it's date rape, and it's weird, but she loves him, and they get married and junk. But yeah, that's like the old weird version. This is the newer version, which is all Disneyed up. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching, if you did, and if you got bored about halfway through and shut it off, well, cool. Thanks for that. But have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful day. Just remember, read stories, read books. Open a book when you think you want to use the computer, or want to play a video game, or watch a movie. Because reading words is a lot better than watching them. Just so you know, the imagination is wonderful. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Microphone. Have a good day.